Okay, can we all see what's a remarkably blank screen at the moment? Rather than run you through the details of financial advice and wealth management, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about myself. I know we all like to buy into people rather than what they do. A quick journey through the city. I went to school, if I get onto the right thing, I went to school with Mr. Jeff Davis, one of, I believe, your founder members. I know perhaps I look a little less haggard than Jeff, but 1976, I started in the city. Jeff, I think we left school in 1976, wasn't it? I hope so, otherwise I've lost a year. I started on the metal exchange in 1976, which actually is now one of the last open outcry markets in Europe. And these two pictures, albeit before my time, show what the metal exchange looked like. In the second picture on the right, I was probably, well, not in the picture, but that was probably my time down there. That's where I started trading in the city. I was in the on the metal exchange for about 10 years, and then the commodity market started crashing. This was roughly the same time as Big Bang, which was the deregulation of the stock market. So in 1986, I moved over to the stock market. And here I am with hair and a moustache in 1986, working for Phillips and Drew. 2 years later, I seem to have more hair, added glasses, and smiling for some bizarre reason. Then 2 years later, I seem to have lost everything: the hair, the moustache, and my sense of humor. 2015, I basically left the stock market in 2003. I was a trader at Deutsche Bank until 2003. I left in 2003 and traded for myself for a dozen years. So I've got almost about 30 years, almost 40 years of experience trading. 2015, it was pretty much time for me to go back to work. So I retrained as a wealth manager. I'd like to think that my experience as a trader and having been in the city for 30 odd years has kind of held me in good stead for wealth management, but wealth management is more than just investment. I joined St. James's Place, or rather I work under the St. James's Place umbrella since 2016. St. James's Place is a platform where they do the compliance, risk management, the business assurance. It's obviously a fairly heavily regulated industry. 2021, what do I actually do? Pensions, investment. So we do pensions. I'd say that's the mainstay of what I do. It seems to be a fairly opaque industry to a lot of people, shrouded in mystery. So we can set up a new private pension, and I don't know if you're aware, there's no limit to the number of pensions you can have. You're only limited each year by the maximum contribution, which depends on a number of different factors. One is annual allowance. There's also something called lifetime allowance. There's also something called the money purchase annual allowance. But we obviously ensure that all advice fits within those conditions. We tied up old pensions. Now this, I think, is a really valuable service. For a lot of people who've had jobs in the past, they tend to leave pensions behind. And it's something that once a year they get a statement from Scottish Widows or even Abbey Life, who have long gone, obviously. But we can actually consolidate those pensions into one. The main advantage of that is that the pensioner will actually, you don't have to be a pensioner, but someone who has a private pension, we can bring them all together, one place, one point of advice, and rather than calling a call centre in Edinburgh, you'll actually have access to face-to-face, albeit over Zoom, advice from me or my colleagues. We also track down old pensions. It's fairly easy. It doesn't take any commitment. All I need is a signed letter of authority. We send off to your existing or past providers, and we'll get all the information we need. We don't charge for this service. We love funds under management, so consolidating pensions, tracking down old pensions. Love to do it, and 100% of the pension money that you have will be transferred to a new pension with us. New pensions, I know I keep, you'll hear me over the weeks, I keep mentioning this, that even for a basic rate taxpayer, you will get 25% guaranteed return by contributing to a new pension. This is money that every year, if you don't put money into your pension, you're leaving on the table. So never mind Bitcoin scams or getting maybe 1% in a bank if you're lucky, 25% guaranteed return every year for new investments into a pension, guaranteed by HMR government. Right, next slide. Inheritance tax planning. So this is where I dovetail with Ellie fairly nicely. We did a presentation, webinar a couple of weeks ago. And in fact, Ellie and I are doing a joint presentation in 2 weeks at another network. Number of ways we look at inheritance tax planning. I know Ellie looks more at the legal side and kind of circumventing it. We look at the ways of dealing with potential liabilities, one of which is whole of life assurance. This is a fairly simplistic way of dealing with inheritance tax planning. If you have a £500,000 liability, you take out a £500,000 whole of life assurance plan, which is paid into trust. So when you die, the plan is paid into trust, which then pays the IHT liability. We also do other various schemes such as discounted gift plans and accelerated inheritance tax schemes. I'll touch on that last one a bit later. What else do we do? According to my slide pack, nothing. Investments, stock market ISAs, investment bonds, and of course a pension is also an investment because we don't do cash pensions. We also do alternative tax efficient strategies. So I know Darren's probably, even though he's looking rather glum, I can see him there drinking his can of Coke. His eyes could be lighting up now. Venture capital trusts, EISs, and accelerated inheritance tax scheme. Now, this is, I know I've told Ellie about this, I think I mentioned it to Darren. Should someone, older people tend not to like to let go of their assets. So it sounds very easy for someone who has an inheritance tax liability to say, give it to your children, but people generally don't like to. I think as we get older, we'll get a bit grumpy and we'll always say, well, you know what? I earned it, why should my kids, or let them get it when I'm dead? So people are reluctant, I found, to let go control of their assets. With the accelerated inheritance tax scheme, for every £100,000 a client puts in, it goes into a business property scheme, which attracts inheritance tax relief at 0% after 2 years. But for the first 2 years, it gets life assurance to cover the liability. So the client has effectively taken it outside of his estate immediately for financial purposes from day one, but he hasn't lost control of the assets. And all the time money's in there, it's shielded from inheritance tax. If he needs the money, he can take it out at any time. And it goes into fairly low risk investments such as infrastructure projects, solar farms, wind power, and smart meters. Client cases. VCTs are a very viable pension fund alternative. I've got a client who's a city fund manager. He is so over contributed to his pensions that he can no longer get any tax relief on his pension. And I think a lot of people would argue that that's one of the reasons for pension being removed. You don't get tax relief. VCTs, not quite as tax effective as a pension, but for a higher rate taxpayer who's overfunded, they're a very viable alternative. You get 30% tax relief and income tax relief, and they pay the dividends tax free. So very viable. Okay, that last one I just touched on before. This is the accelerated inheritance tax scheme where the client, 80-year-old father of the client, didn't want to lose control of his assets. Right, couple of bullet points. The basic state retirement age is going up to 67 from 2028. So it's probably going to head up towards 70 over the next 20 odd years. So the government is very aware of the fact that A, we're all living longer, and B, it's an increased strain on the state, obviously, the longer you live. So the state retirement age is going up to 67 from 7 years' time. At that state retirement age, should you be fully funded with your national insurance contributions, I think it's 35 years, you're going to get £9,110 as the maximum state pension. This is not going to pay for anyone's retirement unless you're very meagre and very frugal. So, as I said, to encourage people to provide for their own retirement, we get tax relief. Here's another scary number. Somebody who's earning £75,000 will need to earn £54,750 during their retirement. Now, I'm not quite sure where this number comes from, other than roughly 2/3 of the pension. I can assume that it's because when you go into retirement, you're going to cut down. You're not going to be traveling so much. You're not going to be traveling to work. You're going to have the work costs removed. and unfortunately, I think this last slide is the scariest number. To have a pension of 30,000 a year for 25 years from 66, you need £431,000 in your pension pot. That needs quite a lot of saving, and auto enrolment is not going to provide for that for you. That's going to bring me on to my last slide. Albert Einstein was once asked what mankind's greatest invention was, and he replied, compound interest. I don't know how many of you heard this quote before, but at a 10% return, your money will double every 7 years and a bit. My St James's Place pension, I'm quite happy to show it to anybody, last year returned 8%, which, all right, is an exceptional year when the FTSE was down, I think, about 12% year to date. You do need compounding, you do need time, and you do need contributions to attack 25% tax relief. Otherwise, you could be living on that £9,110 a year. Thank you very much. I think short but brief, hopefully. And that's me done.